Welcome to Wednesday, July 5th, 2023, your day weather podcast brought to you by Cowboy State Daily. Check them out at cowboystatedaily.com. Well, folks, a very stormy past few days in some parts of the region, especially across parts of the Intermountain West, right along the divide, even snowed in some of the high mountains in northern Wyoming over the 4th of July period. So a lot going on. And as we go into the middle to the end of this week now, we're going to be very, very cool along and east of the divide and warm along and west of the divide. So more interesting sky watching coming on up. Today, along and east of the divide, basically the front range of Colorado and Wyoming and eastern Montana will be very, very cool today. Then that will stretch out on into the plains. Upslope conditions will produce low clouds, fog, showers. It is not going to feel like July for many of you. Now, on the western slope, you're just going to continue with the heat as very warm weather and dry weather will be found on the other side of the Continental Divide. That's kind of the way it's been here over the last week or so, and that's how it's going to be as we go into the next couple of days. Now, temperatures are going to rebound as we go to the end of the week and the weekend. And I'm afraid to say, Thursday and into Friday and Saturday, there's going to be more severe weather again. Boy, we've had a lot of severe weather and we're not done, as strong thunderstorms are going to be a problem in the same areas where they've been a concern here lately. Now, we do see by the end of the weekend and early next week a big warm-up. However, it may not last very long, but we could have a little bit of heat, especially by Monday and Tuesday of next week on both sides of the divide. Also, we're going to talk about all of the wind, the very strong winds that came this past weekend in parts of the region, especially Wyoming, from thunderstorm outflow winds. We're going to talk about what causes them and why it was so windy with these thunderstorms over the last several days. Just wonderful photos coming in. I mean, just a wide variety. Beautiful photos of sunrises and sunsets, thunderstorm clouds, and then the wind and rainbows, all of those things that we get. But going back to last Friday, through the weekend and into Monday and Tuesday, again, we had more supercells. We had more big thunderstorms building across the region. You could see from miles away. And they again packed a punch with a lot of wind, very heavy rain, and hail again in many areas. So some mean-looking clouds and mean-looking skies. What a shot there near Pilot Butte Dam in Wyoming, near Riverton, with the thunderstorm activity that rolled through there. Some very heavy thunderstorms hit the western and central parts of Wyoming. Really, we had some strong thunderstorms producing a lot of wind from Friday all the way up through yesterday across a wide swath of the region. Then the after effects, well, you got some beautiful rainbow shots that have come on in. This shot here from Dave Bell in Pinedale. Notice the flag and notice the trees right here. Terrible amount of wind with that thunderstorm as it blew on through, causing some damage. Winds were gusting 70, 80, 90 miles an hour or more with these outflow boundaries coming from these thunderstorms. And it just did not happen over a day. It happened multiple days in many areas as we had the perfect setup for that. But also beautiful shots like this from Michelle and Casper as well. Now let's talk briefly about these thunderstorm outflow boundaries. Then we're going to get to our forecast part of the segment here. But one thing that'll happen, especially in the Intermountain West and the Western High Plains, when you have the right ingredients, you can have tremendously strong winds that come from these thunderstorms. And just going back to Meteorology 101 here, if you look at the process, the life cycle of a thunderstorm, you get the building cloud stage, the vertical development here on the left of the cumulus cloud that then becomes a cumulonimbus cloud as it turns into the thunderstorm and starts producing rain. Now notice the arrows here. You have these very strong updrafts that we all know about that happen with these thunderstorms. But as the thunderstorm matures, we also get downdrafts, and these tend to form near the rain shafts as the air is wanting to come down on the backside of the thunderstorm. So the thunderstorm has two areas. An area where the air is rising. That's where you're going to get the hail forming and all the other nastiness and tornadoes. Then you have the downdraft on the backside where you get a lot of very strong and gusty winds. And then as the life cycle continues and the thunderstorm dissipates, the general motion of the atmosphere is down. The air's wanting to sink and you have rain-cooled air. Rain-cooled air is more dense. The colder the air is, the more dense it is. So the physical properties of the air has more force when it comes down. Now, as air comes down from these thunderstorms, it hits the ground and it has to spread out. And as it spreads out, you end up with these very strong winds. And this diagram shows this very well. And I want you to notice this right here. This is very idealized, but what will happen is that as the thunderstorm goes through its life cycle, you have the updraft, then you have the downdraft developing. You get these outflow boundaries that come in, hit the ground, and push out very, very quickly. And they push out sometimes in a 360-degree radius below the thunderstorm. So you can have winds coming in from every direction from these outflow boundaries. So the colder, denser air has more force because it's more dense, and you can get these winds not only accelerating as the air hits the ground and spreads out, but if you start putting mountains and ridges and plateaus and canyons, okay, into these outflow boundaries, then the air gets squeezed. And if you squeeze the air between the canyons, the arroyos, and all of the different terrain features, that accelerates the wind. And this is a problem, especially when you have drier air in the mix. And that's what happened over the last several days. Drier air high in the atmosphere caused the evaporation process to be a bit more robust with the thunderstorms. So you had more colder air available in these thunderstorms in the downdraft to cause these very strong outflow winds. And this is something that'll tend to happen as the season matures, where you have this contrast. We've been talking about how warm and dry it's been on the western slope. Well, that's where the dry air was that was fed into these thunderstorms along and east of the divide. So very moist along and east of the divide, very dry west of the divide. The thunderstorm mixes both of those air masses together, and you have these thunderstorms that can produce very strong and gusty winds. And there's a lot of you, especially in Wyoming, that experienced those strong winds over the last several days with these thunderstorms. Now, the thunderstorm activity today is going to be spread out more out into the plains as the trough of low pressure in the Pacific cold front makes its way east into the Midwest. And as we go through today, this is for noon today, here's the trough in Canada. The cold front is coming in behind it. Upslope winds on the ground will be developing along and east of the divide, bringing the cool, moist upslope conditions. There's going to be low clouds. There's going to be areas of dense fog, a kind of a soupy day. And look where the bullseye is of the coldest air, right on top of this region. Most of the country looking at temperatures closer to average or pretty warm, but smack dab in the middle of the U.S., along the front range of Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, then out into the plains, it is going to be unseasonably cool today. There will be some of you not even leaving the 50s today here on July 5th. The severe weather threat is more south now, into the Corn Belt and Midwest. As the cool, moist area is back here, there could be some showers and thunderstorms, but the severe weather threat is going to be more towards southern and southeastern Colorado than across parts of the southern plains and into the Midwest. And this is where the rain forecast is going to be today, more towards the Midwest with the heavier rain, but upslope conditions will produce areas of light rain and some thunderstorm activity out into this area here. Then you can see drier conditions west of the divide. As we step through the next several days, we're still going to have a deep low up here over Hudson Bay. I mean, this is a real strong low. So this will pump in some cool air into the Great Lakes and Midwest. But this high pressure here over Big Bend country kind of grows and expands, and the heat in the southern plains starts to be more westward towards New Mexico and Arizona. But the jet stream wind is down here, very far south for July. So this will keep the northern tier of the U.S. basically along and north of I-80. Yes, it'll be warmer starting tomorrow into Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but nothing real hot along and north of I-80. South of that line is where the heat will be. So this will still put us in a situation where we're going to get more showers and thunderstorms. So this is the thunderstorm forecast for Thursday. So you can see it starts to pick up again. Some of it gets back along west along in the Interstate 80 corridor. And this is where the severe weather risk is going to be for tomorrow. Look familiar? It should, because we've shown you a map or two that looks a lot like this here over the last several weeks. So strong thunderstorms as temperatures rebound will be a concern Thursday. This is where the thunderstorms will be Friday. So Friday also brings the risk of strong to severe thunderstorms along the front range and out on the eastern plains again. So we're going to have to contend with severe weather here before the week is over. And this is for Saturday. So Saturday, shower and thunderstorm activity in the same areas will be very common again. Then going into next week, this is the heat we talked about. As we get into next week, we actually will see some cooler weather come to the Gulf Coast. Parts of eastern Texas will cool off a bit. The dome of the heat is going to be in the desert southwest. This clockwise flow around the high will bring in some heat right there. So as we get into Monday and Tuesday next week, we can see some very warm temperatures move into the entire region, both sides of the mountains. But we also have these lows up here in the Gulf of Alaska that will be sending fronts through. So whether or not this heat is transient a day or two or lasts longer, we'll see. But if you want some heat, early next week is when we're going to see it. Temperatures by next Tuesday, you can see the heat right here. Very warm conditions by early next week comes in. However, if you were to average the next 10 days, the temperature signature overall over the next week and a half or so continues to show a persistent temperature pattern along the plains and east of the mountains that will continue to be cooler than average. The warmest air will be on the other side of the mountains again over the next 7 to 10 days. Have yourself a good Wednesday. We will see you tomorrow.